Recorded now.
Hi, I am Dr. Sheila Sapp of Sheila Cares, and just welcome. And I have a special guest with me today, Pastor Dexter B. Jenkins, and I am so excited that he's going to be with us. And my business is Sheila Cares, Educational Consulting and Services. And as you know, I do care about people. And that's why when I heard Pastor Jenkins last Friday, I just knew I had to talk with him. So, how are you doing, Pastor Jenkins?
I'm Miss Sapp. I'm excited to be here with you, and I've had a great week so far, and I'm quite sure that you and I are going to have a great time talking about, financial literacy and education. You're an educator, and I'm an educator of spiritual things as well as natural things. So I'm quite sure we're going to have a good time and produce a good show for your audience.
Okay, great, great. Before we get started, and I do have quite a few questions.
I got quite a few answers. Let's go.
Okay. Would you just briefly tell our audience a little bit about yourself
Okay, I'll be glad
as
to
a
do
way of
that.
introducing yourself?
Yes, I would most definitely do that. As you introduced me, my name is Dexter B. Jenkins. I am the senior pastor of Fellowship Christian Church in Boston, Massachusetts. I am also a real estate entrepreneur. Also, very much like you, I'm also a financial educator. So I also run a corporation called the DBJ Enterprises. And what we do there is is actually how you saw me. What we do is we show people how to combine their finances, their business, and their money life together in a very pragmatic fashion. And so I really have a passion. I've always had a passion for teaching people and connecting with people, very much like you. And so that's a little bit of myself. On a professional side, I'm the husband of one wife.
Well, great. It's good to
Yeah,
hear
that's good.
that.
That's good to know, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll be married. Actually, on Monday, I'll be married to my wife Kendra for 24 years. We have
Wow,
three.
congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am. We have three children. Our oldest is Danielle. She's 35. We have a Cameron is 22, and my youngest is 20. And
Okay.
so we have a grandson who's 7. And so, so that's a little bit about myself. I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. So that, single, not single, I'm the only child of my mom and dad, Sam and Ann Jenkins. And so, that's a little bit about myself.
Okay. Great, great. Well, I'm the oldest of 6,
Okay.
and I grew up in Camden, New Jersey.
Camden, New Jersey. I'm very familiar with
Yes,
Camden,
sir.
New Jersey. Yes.
Yeah, I'm like 10 minutes away from
Really?
Philadelphia.
Yeah. No. I've been to Camden a few times.
Okay.
Now
I
this
knew there was a reason that we would
Yeah.
connect.
Well, there's something funny, but I used to. This is my college girlfriend was from Camden.
Really?
So I spent a lot of time in Camden.
Okay.
So yeah, I know Camden quite well. Yeah.
Well, great, great. Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about a year ago, I attended a conference, and
Okay.
one of the things that the presenter said was that whatever we decide to become or
Right.
do in life, there's a reason that we
Right.
all have a why. And it's that why that drives you to, you are a finance mentor, you're about money. So I
Right.
wanted to ask you, what was your why? What made you decide to share faith-based principles on
Right.
about
Well,
money and wealth?
yeah. Well, I was. This is probably the third time I've answered this question today. So hopefully I'll be better on it than I was the first 2 times this week. But I think as I said earlier this week, I've always grown up around it. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I come from a family that talked about money. I'm telling them, my audience yesterday, that when I was a youngster, I had a paper route at 12 years old. And part of my paper route, what I had to do is I had to deliver papers and collect money. And so my dad owned his own barbershop. My dad had real estate property. And so the saying is, Miss Sheila, more is caught than taught. And so I
Mhm.
think I caught it at a very young age. And then I've always been a person that if I know something, I like to teach it. And so that's how I started teaching people informally. And then I was part of the financial services industry for about over 20 years. So I
Mhm.
sold life insurance and investments. And I've always had a passion for teaching people just in general, but in particular African Americans, because I think that
Mhm.
there's just a lot of information we did not get. And so I'm passionate about bringing that to our people.
Right. And I want to correct you. I am not a money person. And my experience with money and finances probably came late, and I still have more to learn. But
Right,
I just want to share with you, as I said, I'm the oldest of six
right,
and grew up in a single parent home.
right.
And so my my early experience with money was I needed to make sure that I got a job and
Exactly.
had the basic
Right,
essentials.
right.
I was concerned about having food,
Yes, ma'am.
electricity, having a place to lay my head. So that's one of the things that drove me.
Right.
I don't ever recall, seeing my mother, and I know
Saying about your earliest sort of memories of, mom having to put food on the table. So pick up there.
right, and not only that, put food on the table, but sometimes decide which bill was going to be paid.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that's the type of background that I had with money. And my
Right.
first job, I remember my aunt had a cleaners.
Okay.
And so I worked there and helped. And when she paid me, I got cash. So I
Okay.
didn't have experience of having a check.
Right.
So, and I did put the money aside and I did buy items for school.
Right.
And then when I was in high school, I worked as a teacher's aide. And
Okay.
that was the first time that I actually saw my name
On the check.
on a check. And I'm
Wow.
going to be honest with you. I even wondered now, where am I supposed to endorse this?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
that's my experience.
Right. Right.
So you were saying that your family, your parents were entrepreneurs and so forth.
Exactly. Yeah.
So was there anything specific that they did to cultivate your interest in finance?
As I was saying, I don't think they did it intentionally. I
Mhm.
just saw it. Like I said, I grew up, I'm an only child. So a lot of times when my mother would go to work, I would have to go to the barber shop with my dad.
Okay.
And so I would see him, cutting people's hair. But then obviously when somebody cuts your hair, what do? They give you money. So I'm seeing him, conduct business all day long because I would be there from like maybe 6 o'clock. Well, my dad would shop open at 8, and then my mom would pick me around 3 o'clock. So I'm there like a whole 8 hours
Right.
until my mom picks me up. And so I'm watching guys come in, come out. I'm watching my
Mhm.
dad perform a service, get paid for it. And so I was just always around that, in the barbershop is just like a hair salon, money is being
Right.
exchanged all the time. So it wasn't like your experience where, obviously, when
Right.
the first job you got paid cash. And then like I guess very much like you, I didn't see a physical check until I got to high school. But I was always around money. And then I think I may have mentioned earlier, I got a paper route at 12. And
Okay.
so what I had to do is I had to go around to the neighborhood, deliver the papers, but then also, Miss Sheila, I also had to collect the money. So I would have to deliver the
Okay.
paper. Then on Friday and Saturday, I would ring the doorbell, say, "Hey, Mrs. Johnson, you owe $1.95 for this week." And so I learned how to ask for money. I learned that people sometimes say, "Come by," they ain't there. So my education, I learned that sometimes, even though you like people, I had to cut their service off because they weren't paying, and so it was
Okay.
and then also, Michelle, this is also what happened was uh I had to collect the money, right? And then I had a manager. he would come and pick the money up. So I had to learn how to keep what was mine and give
Mm-hmm.
him what was his. And so it was just a great experience, learning how to deal with people, how to handle money, how not to be a pushover when it comes to people saying, "Oh, I'll pay next week," and I'm like, "Okay, after this third week, I'm cutting you off until you pay me." You know, so these were life
Okay.
lessons that I learned. Maybe because I delivered papers from like 12 to like 16. So I did that for
Okay.
about 4 years. Then my next job was at McDonald's. And so that was my first sort of semi
Okay.
job where I was with a check and people and all that. But I learned a lot of valuable lessons as a paper boy.
And one of the things, as I shared with you about my background, and there are a lot of children
Right.
who don't even have the experiences that you have had about
Exactly.
money. And
Right.
so, they don't develop a mindset for money
Right.
or finances. And I
Exactly.
must say, even though, I went through high school, I really don't recall ever having a class to talk about finances
Gotcha.
and setting up a budget or
Exactly.
some sort of
Hmm.
plan. And
Exactly.
so everything was relatively new for me.
Right.
So I just want to ask you, because you've had a lot of experiences, even though you had those experiences, were there any lessons that you learned from maybe not making the right decisions
Right.
about your money or
Yes, ma'am.
finance that you don't
Yes.
mind sharing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had
Okay.
plenty of hiccups. I don't think anyone who truthful would tell you they're happy in any area of their life, including their finances.
Mm-hmm.
I think when one of my biggest hiccups came when my wife and I bought our first house. We
Okay.
bought a three family, what we would call a triple decker here in Massachusetts. I don't know what you guys are called in Georgia, but I'm quite sure you had something like that maybe in Camden when you grew
Yeah,
up. But
3-story. Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a 3-story house.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Same thing. So yeah, so we're on the same page. And so what we did, one of the biggest mistakes we did, Miss Sheila, was we went as opposed to waiting because we didn't like the color of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So as opposed to waiting a year or two before we changed the color of the house, we immediately put additional debt onto what we had inside of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of having a young family and just getting started, it just wasn't a very smart move to make. And so what I learned out of that is that sometimes, even though things may not be exactly the way you want it, this term that we all know, delayed gratification, is critical. Meaning, okay, I see what I want to do, but is this the right time to do it? And so that was a humongous lesson that I learned.
And I'm glad you mentioned that delayed gratification. And I
Exactly.
also think about perseverance.
Yes, ma'am.
And I learned that early
Right.
because my little checks that money that I received, I had to save it. And believe me, as a teenager in the summertime, we would window shop
Right.
and you would, walk by and you look at something you wanted and,
Exactly.
you would think, well, one day I'll be able
Yes,
to
ma'am.
get that or I'll
Uh-huh.
be able to.
Exactly.
And so you learn how to persevere
Uh-huh.
and not look to be gratified right then
Immediately.
because life isn't that way.
There sure isn't.
It is not that way.
No. And that's a lesson that you never get over. That there are time there are seasons for everything. And learning that, including in your finances, yeah, there will be a season where you can walk into a store and buy whatever you want whenever you want it. But for most people, it may not be that season now. But now, because of credit and credit cards and things of nature, sometimes you could sort of do what we call fake the funk. You could buy something and not have the money for it. But then, okay, now it's instant gratification, but then you end up paying for it for
Right.
years on top of years. And so, I think it's just that balance. And as I was saying to you, or I was saying to on the last show that you saw me on initially.
Right.
See, the reason you have to have what we call a spending plan is because when you have a plan in place, it helps to discipline you. Because you say, okay, you know what? Even though this dress, I really would like to have it, but I'm saving for a house over here. So if I spend that money on this house, it's taken away from my money or for my house or for my college education or whatever it may be.
Right.
And so having a plan disciplines you a lot of times.
And the thing that you just shared about a dress versus a house, then
Right.
you need to prioritize
Yes, you sure
and
do.
make that decision, which is more important right
Yes,
now,
ma'am.
a house,
A house
not this
is
outfit.
not an outfit that a year from now that may be in the back of my closet that I'll never use again.
And believe me, Pastor Jenkins, I've had that happen where I just had to buy this and I take it home and
Right.
it's in the closet.
With the
Didn't
tag still
even
on.
take the tags
You
off.
didn't even take the tag off. You like me because I looked at my closet a couple weeks ago and I had all these things with tags on them.
Right.
And I said, you know what? I'm gonna wear them or bless somebody else with them. So I
Okay.
did end up giving some away because I'm like, I'm not gonna wear this again because I
Right.
gained the weight or whatever, or I just didn't like it anymore. But sometimes one of the rules in my book that I think you bought was getting your money straight and building wealth is
Right.
I have the 7-day rule.
Okay. I'm glad that's, I
And
wanted you to
talk about
elaborate
that a
on
little
that.
bit. Yeah. But yeah, it's in there. And it says, sometimes what you want to do is look at before you make a purchase, and particularly a large purchase, wait 7 days before you make it. And then after 7 days, if you still want to make it, go ahead and make it. But a lot of times, see, because it's the emotion that we get caught up in the moment. And then particularly if you're talking to a salesperson and they're very good at their job.
Oh, yes, they are.
Yeah, they can convince you to do something that you don't need to do at this particular point in time. And so one of the phrases that I heard a guy say years ago, he says, he was talking about it in regards to other things, but I think it would fit in finances as well. He says, we have to learn how to stop being emotionally wild, meaning I can't let my emotions run wild and cause me to drive me into decisions that are not beneficial for me long term. And so, that 7-day purchase rule, if you feel that you're about to buy something and you say, hold on, let me, as opposed to being in this moment, let me step back off this purchase for a minute. And after 7 days, I still have the same enthusiasm and passion for it, maybe something I should do.
And guys who are watching, I just want to say, you really need to purchase getting your money straight and building wealth. And, Pastor Jenkins just mentioned a couple of the principles, and we'll talk some more about them. But Pastor Jenkins, in preparation for our session,
Yes, ma'am.
I just posted some questions. And I did note in your book that you mentioned that wealth means different things to different people.
Yes, it does.
And so I asked that question,
Yes.
what do you consider wealth is? And I saw responses like no stress,
Right.
or being able to pay off all of my bills, or
Yes, ma'am.
not owe any money,
Right.
or being happy and being able to do whatever I want.
Exactly.
So what is wealth to you?
Wealth to me is a mixture of all things you talked about.
Okay.
And I think it's holistic. I think it deals with, for me, obviously I'm a pastor, so I would say this, it's having a relationship with God clearly. It's being healthy in my body. It's having good, relationship with my wife, my children, and so on and so forth. And then having finance. So wealth is very holistic to me.
Right.
But then if you go talk to someone else, they'll say, hey, just like the answer, the question you asked, and people came up with different answers.
Right.
Somebody, hey, I want a big house, I want a big car. But I think all of the answers, I think what's the common denominator out of all of them is that people want freedom.
Yes.
And
yes.
people want options and choices.
Yes.
And I think that's what wealth does. Because some people say, hey, man, give me $10 million or $100 million. And for them, that wouldn't be wealthy. But then you take somebody and you give them, 200,000 or 300,000, that would be wealth to them. So it's always going to be individual. And I can tell you this,
Right.
Miss Sheila, years ago, my grandmother, Catherine Jenkins, she died at the age of like 92.
Wow.
Yeah, so my grandmother had some time in. And one
Mhm.
time she said to me, she said, Dexter, she said, I'm a wealthy woman. And I'm like, what do you mean you're a wealthy woman? She says, I can go anywhere I want to go and I can get anything I want to get and I don't have to pay for it. And then now this is the kicker here. My grandmother had 10 children.
10.
10 children. So multiply that out with grandchildren. So it means so it's a clan of us, right?
Right, right.
So it wasn't like if someone called you and said, Grandma wants to come spend time with you, that you gonna tell her no. She would come, and when she came, she would stay at your house and eat your food. And she said, I want to go here. And so we took her there. And so it really changed my perspective of it's not necessarily money, but it's really having choices and options.
Right.
And she
Well,
recognized that she had choices and options. She could because she
and she used them.
And she used it. Yeah, she was so
Smart.
popular. My grandmother was so popular that she had 2 homegoing services. She had one in South Carolina where she lived most of her life, and then she had one in Connecticut where she spent her last maybe 5 or 10 years, and both of them were packed.
Wow.
So she was
What a testimony.
so she was rich in she was rich in relationships,
Right.
and because she was rich in relationships, anything she needed, she had.
Well, I want to get back and focus on some more of what you were talking about, this faith-based
Right,
principles.
right.
I was just so amazed about the fact, and people don't think about the Bible and
Okay.
scriptures
Yes, ma'am.
having anything to do with finance and money.
Right.
And so, what I want you to do is talk about some of those principles. And I sent you some to talk
Okay.
about. And
Yes,
I
ma'am.
really like the beginning ones that you mentioned. Um, one, principles one. And I think
Okay.
that was if I remember correctly.
God is the source of
Yes,
our provision.
yes.
So God is
And
the source
people
of our
don't,
provision. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I say God is the source of our provision, and so everything else is a resource.
right,
Everything, and everybody else is a resource. So even though, so God is the source. So He is in the middle, and
right,
then so everything so whether it's my job or whether it's my business or whether it's my 401k or my retirement plan, everything flows from Him because He is, and I mean, all of nature knows this. Every bird knows that when trees or squirrels or animals, I mean, they recognize that all their provision comes. They don't necessarily say that, but it comes from God. So all of nature, all of, I guess I would say humanity, and just all of the living world knows that God is the source of everything. And so I think what happens, Ms. Sheila, is that if I can position in my mind, God is my source, it takes the pressure off of me being too tied into maybe my job or to my pension or my social security or the government, because those things will fail you, but God won't.
that is so true. I'm just pulling up here the um, the principles. I forgot to do that before
No, no,
I
that's
came
fine.
on.
I got the
But
book in my hand right here. So if
oh,
you want to
okay.
call them
Well,
out,
it's
I
on
got
my
them right here.
phone.
Yeah, I got it right here.
And then you mentioned about reading your Bible
Yes,
15
ma'am.
minutes a day.
15 minutes a day.
That's principle number
Now
two, people.
that's principle number 2. Now, the reason why I say that is because I just believe I've always looked at the Bible as not a religious book, not only a religious book, but also a book about life and being successful. Because it's just, I don't know if you heard the acronym of the Bible, BIBLE. It says
Yeah.
basic instructions before leaving earth.
Right.
Well, if we really believe that it was the basic instructions before leaving earth, shouldn't I consult the instructions every day to see how I can
Yes.
live my life? It would make sense to me. And so I said, hey, look, you and I can't be too busy where we can't spend 15 minutes to a half hour reading the scriptures a day. And so people say, I'm too busy. I'm like, okay, let me follow you around for a little bit. I bet you if I followed you around and watched you how much TV you watch at night, I can guarantee you I could find at least 15 minutes for you to read your Bible.
Then, of course, principle 3, the tithing.
Yes, ma'am. And tithing, I always say, my desire is for everyone to be a 10-10-80 person.
Okay.
So tithe 10%, save a minimum of 10%, and learn how to live off the 80. Because what tithing does, and tithing is a very controversial subject. I don't know why it is, but for most people it is.
Yes, it is.
Because what tithing, I'm actually writing a book on this now. But one of the things tithing does is this: it proves that you're depending on God for all your provision. It also proves for you that it is breaking down the walls of selfishness and self-centeredness in your life. And now what it also does, it also opens up channels for God to bring it back to you. You know what I mean? Now,
Right.
we don't give to get, but we do know that's a benefit of it. You know what I mean? And so tithing has a bunch of principles, and there are a lot of people, Sheila, who are not necessarily would consider themselves people of the faith, but they tithe and they're tapping into this success principle because it's a law.
Right.
Right? It's the law of sowing and reaping, or giving and receiving, or seed time. I mean, that is just a law. And so what you, as a pastor and as the person who deals with people financially, one of the things I say is, hey, you need to get to a point where you are a tither. Now, beside the controversy side of it, I also recognize there is a great amount of fear in that, because people say, hey, whether I'm a pastor, whether I'm operating as Dexter B. Jenkins, they said, I can't make it off the 90%. Now you're asking me to give 10 more percent. Off the 100%, excuse me. Now you ask me to live off 90. And I'm saying, well, yeah, exactly. Thank you. And I'm saying, well, if you couldn't make it off the 100%, you probably need God's help in this. And one of the ways God has decided to help us is through that. And in time that I preached on this in my church, what I do is I hold up 10 $1 bills. And I say, and just say, this is my 10 fingers of the $10 bill. I say, God is asking for this one, just one, and you have the other 9 to work with. Now think about our tax system. Uncle Sam doesn't ask you, and God voluntarily asks us to give it.
Yeah, Uncle Sam does.
No, he ain't asking you nothing. It's like, soon as I'm quite sure when you first got your first check, you were like, where are these taxes? Who's FICA?
Yes. Yes.
So you quickly found out that they don't ask you, they take it because they don't trust you. But God trusts us enough and believe that we love him enough to voluntarily give it. And then as we voluntarily give it to him, he's able to do certain things. And he really partners with us to make this other 90% go a lot farther and for us to be a lot more productive with it.
Right.
So just trying to break down those walls with people. And then, as a pastor, people, you get all types of people the churches want your money, and all pastors want to do all that. I said, listen, that is not my intention. My wife and I know how to make money outside of church, believe me.
And I'm looking at principle 6,
right,
which says, realize that someone else's ice is no colder than yours.
And that principle speaks to me, Sheila, the fact that and this is what my sort of my meditation this morning as I was thinking, we really have, you have to succeed in life, you have to see yourself as being a competent person. Now, that doesn't mean you know everything.
Right.
But that does mean I see myself as being valuable. I see myself as being significant. I see myself as being someone who is competent. And then, so if I see myself as that, like you said, I think maybe it was somebody else, like I said, I had so many conversations with, but one thing that we were talking about, that God gives everybody gifts talents and
Yes.
abilities. I call it
Yes.
GTA. God gives everybody GTAs, gives talents and abilities. Now, a lot of times, just like you said to me earlier, you say, you know what? I could recommend this young man to somebody else, but I can do it myself.
Right. I decided to
So
step
yeah,
out and do it myself.
you say I'm gonna do it myself. Okay, so I'm your first interview now. You'll do another how many hundred of these, whatever you decide to do. Now your hundreds will be better than your first one because you get better as you do it.
Right.
But a lot of times we never step out because we think someone else's ice is colder than ours, or they're more competent, or they're better. And so there's this mind game that I believe is demonic, that the devil plays on us, and he talks us out of where God wants us to go.
Right. And that is so true. And that's one of the things, even with my business,
Yes, ma'am.
educational consulting.
Right.
I try to share that all the time. That you're right. We each have our own unique gifts,
Exactly.
and God has gifted me with what He wants me to have
Exactly.
to serve others and to
Exactly.
glorify Him.
Exactly. That's exactly
So,
100%.
and then sometimes we let ourselves be talked out of it.
Yeah.
Boy, there's so many other questions I want to ask. I'm
Go
trying
ahead.
to, narrow it down because
Yeah,
I'm looking at the time. It's like, what? But
but think about what we're talking about, the area of finances, because that's
yes,
why you really, one of the reasons you brought me in is that a lot of times that gift that God gave you to serve humanity is the gift that He wants to use to bring tremendous income to you. And then a lot of times we find that we're struggling. Well, you're struggling because you didn't step out and like you did tonight and say, you know what, I'm gonna do this myself. I'm gonna learn how to work this Zoom.
right.
I'm gonna ask these questions. I'm gonna download the book. And one thing my wife and I always talk about is this. And thank God for my wife in a lot of different areas. But one of the things that we have a common belief is this: we can figure it out.
Okay.
And I think that's a belief that you just have to have. If I see myself as a competent person, either I can figure it out or partner with someone who knows it. Because I was talking to a young man earlier this week. I said, once you begin to get in motion, God begins to put the people in your path that you need to meet. But if you're sitting on the sideline, He can't do that.
Okay. I want you to talk about your 3-ship
Yes, ma'am.
method.
Yes, yes. Now I got that from the Bible. The 3 ships.
Okay.
I took that from one of the things I talk about is reading the book of Proverbs every day. Right, one chapter in the book of
Okay.
Proverbs and one chapter in the New Testament. I tell people to read. But after reading through the Proverbs and reading other things, I found that there are 3 things that wealthy people do that I found, and I termed it the SHIP method. SHIP. So it stands for stewardship, ownership, entrepreneurship. Those are the 3 ships. And so the first stewardship is, okay, that deals with how do I competently handle my money. So just like you said, I got my first check at whatever age, 16, 17, or would I get it at 33? How do I handle my money in a way that's competent, which doesn't allow me to have more month than money? And so I find that people who do well, they steward their money well, so they're able to put a tithe 10%, save 10%, and live off the 80. And then the tool that they use, Ms. Sheila, to do that is something called a spending plan or a budget. Other people call it a budget. I call it a spending plan.
Spending plan. Okay.
Right. Because I think that the terminology is just stronger because money comes into my hand. Okay, this is how I'm planning on spending it. Where sometimes a budget, people feel like they're powerless in a budget and then they end up breaking it because if something's too hard, you ain't gonna stay in the long term.
Right, that's true. Like a diet.
Same concept. Budget and diet, same terminology.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so the stewardship deals with how do I competently spend my money, and I use a spending plan to do that. Now, ownership talked about me owning the right things. And so what I want to do is I want to own things that do 2 things, but primarily things that appreciate in value and things that also bring in cash flow, right? So you and I talked about earlier, do I buy this dress or do I buy this triple decker over here? Do I buy this dress or do I put away money for my business? Do I buy this dress or do I put money in my 401k? Now, there'll come a time where you'll be able to do both. But in the beginning, as I steward my money right, I have to begin to purchase things that appreciate in value. I'll give you a story of my dad. He bought the house that I grew up in I think he said 1978 for $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know what the housing prices down in Georgia, but I know in Massachusetts,
Well, I know they're high up
yeah,
north.
you can't get a closet for $30,000 around here. Piece of a driveway, maybe. But he said, yeah, son. He said because I also have a real estate license, so I flip
Mm-hmm.
we flip houses and all that type of stuff. And so I said, Dad, this property is probably worth about $200,000, $250,000. So you paid 30 for it, but
Mm-hmm.
over time it has appreciated to be worth a couple $100,000. Well, that's what you want to begin to purchase, and that's what you want to begin to own. But then also, not only does it own, Miss Sheila, does it give him it appreciated in value, but every month, because he paid the property off, he gets money coming in from the tenants. So what I need to do is I need to learn how to buy things like that. Somebody like yourself who was an education consultant. Now I don't know how long you've been in business, but some things that you want to begin to do is build
3 years.
Okay, 3 years. And so now
I'm a newbie.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Amen. And so as you begin to do more of these type of programs, and then you begin to maybe create courses and online things, those are what we call assets. Because I don't know how long you were an educator, but if you look at the fact that you have accumulated some knowledge,
yes,
that other people need, correct? Now,
yes,
if people need this knowledge, now they can pay you for that knowledge, and you can do a course, and you could be off maybe up here in Massachusetts visiting your brother, and then the money is coming in. Well, that's an asset. That's ownership. And so that's the second ship. And then the third ship is entrepreneurship. And so entrepreneurs, very much like yourself, very much like ourselves,
mm-hmm.
To me, that's a whole nother level. And the great thing about entrepreneurship is that you are able to create this thing called leverage, meaning this, you don't only get paid off what you do, you also get paid off the efforts of other people. Now, it has to be win-win situation. You're not taking advantage of people, but as they perform a service, helping people, you profit off of that. And so I talk about what I found, whether I'm reading the Bible or reading other success books, and also watching people, I found that most of the time, those three things are true. They're good stewards, they own the right things, and they are entrepreneurs.
Okay. Well, one of the questions that I asked had to do with credit cards.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know in your book you talk about credit cards and the different parts.
Mm-hmm.
Would you kind of address that? And also, there are some people who have credit cards where they have to pay it off
At the end
at
of
the
the month.
end of the month.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then there's some people who
Can carry a
don't want to
balance.
deal with them at all,
True.
and they
Exactly.
save their money and they pay cash for everything.
Exactly.
So talk about credit cards, and I know that sometimes it's good to have them.
Yes, ma'am.
So what are they good for, and
Right.
what are they not good for?
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let me start with what they're good for.
Okay.
They're good for convenience. Because a lot of times we don't carry. I mean, I don't know about you, but me, I very rarely do I have cash on me.
Okay.
I just don't. So if maybe I'm going to the barbershop, I may go get some cash, but for the most part, I don't carry cash on me a lot. So somebody may say, "Hey, can I get a few dollars?" I'm like, I'm tapping myself. I don't have any because I just don't carry.
And you'll
cash.
be telling the truth.
Yeah, I'll be telling the truth. Yeah, I ain't lying. I'm telling the truth. I don't have it. I got access to it, but I just don't have it on me.
Right.
But I think they're great for convenience, meaning I don't want to carry a pocket full of cash. I got a credit card here. Sometimes they're good for emergencies. Maybe it'll be something jumps off and you have to have it paid for it, and you don't have the money on hand. It could be good for that. Because one thing I talk about inside of your spending plan is having what we call a cushion fund.
Okay.
Other people
Like
call
a
them emergency fund.
contingency or emergency.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. Contingency, emergency. So
Right.
part of your spending plan is you want to see how fast you can get to $1,000 first, and
Mhm.
then after that, how fast can you get to 3 months of your income? Got it? So
Okay.
yeah, and so what happens is if I'm able to do that, I won't need the credit card because I can go to it and have cash. But well, maybe in the meantime, I'm not doing that. I don't have that saved up. A credit card could be something that could help you out. You know what I mean? And then sometimes people use it as they use and pay it off, and then they use trips and all type of benefits off it.
Right, right.
It just depends on that. Now, what it's not good for is carrying balances long term. It's not good for if you can't control yourself.
Okay. Yeah, of
So it
course.
really depends on the individual. So there's some people who say, I don't want to have nothing to do with credit cards. Well, those people may be pretty good at it because they're disciplined. They're disciplined enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to run up this credit card because what the tendency is something psychological about you spending cash versus you spending credit. See,
Hmm.
cash, you mean you worked hard for that money, and now I'm seeing it leave my hand and go into somebody else's hand.
Right,
Well, that transaction is different than you just throwing some plastic down and just swiping it. Different psychological things are going on here. You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
And so I think a person who is disciplined enough to say, you know what, even though my name is on this credit card, Bank of America's name is on this credit card too. Mean I owe them when I spend this money.
Right.
You know,
And it's
and
yeah.
so
Hmm.
you just have to keep that in mind as you
Right.
use credit card. And Miss Sheila, you got to understand credit is the way of the world. And people back in the day you could rent a car without having a credit card. Not now. You go to hotels.
So you have to have the
so
card.
you have to have it. I mean, you can use your debit card if you want to, but I'm leery of that because if somebody hacks my debit card, they got access to my bank account. Whereas if my credit card, somebody hacks that, I call up Capital One, whoever I have a credit card with, say, hey, look, I didn't do this charge. They take it off. So, well, your bank ain't gonna do that. They're gonna be like, well, oh well, they got it. So
Well,
it's just a different
mental
transaction.
note, I need to make a change because a lot of times, around and about getting
Yeah,
gas or in the grocery
yeah,
store, I'll just use my debit card.
yeah. I don't.
So,
I stopped doing that a couple of years ago because I'm like, you know what? If somebody gets a hold of and we've had this happen, where somebody has hacked either my wife's card or my card, I'm like, hold up. I wasn't in Connecticut, and somebody's in Connecticut. I'm in Boston, and they're at McDonald's or they're at such and such. And so what I
mhm,
said, so we switched up probably about 2 or 3 years ago, using a credit card, and then what we do, we just pay it off. But
right.
so same. So I'm not carrying a whole bunch of interest on it. But I just know that if I have a charge on my credit card that I see that's not mine, I call them up and say, hey, look, I didn't charge this. They'll take it off. So it
And I
just to
wanted
me.
to ask this, do you actually need to have a credit card to establish the fact that, you have a good history of
Right,
paying? So
right.
you actually do need to have one.
Well, it may not start with a credit. Now, most times it's easy to start with a credit card, but if you have some sort of school loan or you
Okay.
have a personal loan, the creditors are just looking to see that you have a record of paying some sort of debt.
Right.
So it
Right.
may not be a credit card, but
Mhm.
it's the easiest thing to get. So people start with credit cards, and I tell and if you want to, if if you want to help your children establish an early record with credit, you can get a credit card and they can hold one of your cards and they'll be on as what they call an authorized user, and
Okay.
they're piggybacking off of your credit, and so it helps them to have a better credit score earlier.
I wanted to ask you about money mindset.
Yes, ma'am.
And could you talk about that? Now, I told you my early
Mm-hmm.
beginnings with money.
Right.
It was pretty much the survival
Yes,
type
ma'am.
mentality.
Mhm.
So if you come from that type of mentality,
Yes, ma'am.
then what are some things that you can do to get away from that?
Right. Well,
Are
I
there,
think it starts with I think it starts with doing some things we've talked about thus far. That
okay,
for us, because our faith is our what grounds us. When you begin to realize that God is a God of abundance, and you are
okay.
a child of God. So everything. I don't know, Michelle. Do you have any children?
Yes, I have an adult daughter.
Okay. Now think about this. What's her name?
Her name is Nicolin. I call her Nikki.
Nick.
But
Okay.
you go ahead. I want to share a little story about her.
Okay. Okay. Well, think about Nikki.
Okay.
Everything that is yours is Nikki's. If if you guys have a great relationship, like I'm 50, I'll be 53 in a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
I could go home anytime I want to. I still go into the refrigerator. I don't ask to do things because everything that is my father's
Mm-hmm.
is mine, right?
Right.
So, well, think about this. I'm quite sure Nikki's the same way. She'd probably, hey, mom, I'm doing this. She may let you know she's doing it, but she's on her way to doing it as she's telling you about it. You know what I mean? Uh, well, if God owns everything, right, and He's my Father,
Mm-hmm.
that means I have access to what? Everything as well
Everything.
because He is my dad. You know.
All of his promises.
Yes. Well, think about this.
All of it.
The Lord's prayer starts with our
Father.
Father. So Jesus commands us. Not that I'm not trying to turn this into a Bible study, but still we're going in that direction.
Well, no, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. I'm just as long as you're good with it.
Yeah.
But he's establishing in our thinking that He is our Father, and so as a Father who has abundance, shouldn't we have an abundance mentality? So I start with that, but then I begin to do little. I have to catch myself because most of us come up from a scarcity background.
Right.
Turn the lights off, do this and fix this, and I can make do with that. And I'm not saying all of that was bad, but what it did was it taught us that life, that it was hard to get money. It was you got to scrimp and scrape to get everything. You got to everything is like you said earlier, I'm in a survival mode. And so what you got to begin to do is, like you said, all of God's promises. I start with that, but then I begin to do things that would break me out of that. So I found myself doing little things like when I was struggling, I wouldn't fill my gas tank up. And I'm like, where did that come from? That's a scarcity mentality because I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to have enough money. So I'll say, no, fill your tank up. I tell my people in my church, I said, listen, fill your tank up. Don't put $20 in and then I don't know if I'm gonna have enough. No. And so go around your house. Those things that are in disrepair, little by little, begin to fix those up. Because what it begins to do, it will begin to raise your level of acceptance.
Right.
Begin to develop an abundance mentality for yourself. And so, those are little things, little life hacks that you have to begin to do. I remember a few years ago, we put all new windows in our house
Mm-hmm.
because we have an old farmhouse, and some of the windows Sheila didn't go up. So what we would do was put a stick in the window to keep it up.
Right.
And I caught myself saying, "Hold up, this is not this. If I'm supposed to be a child of God and a king's kid, I'm not supposed to be living with a stick in my window." And so you begin to catch yourself in these in the little things in life. I tell people sometimes, I says, listen, if you want to start to develop an abundance mentality, start in your underwear drawer. I said, go get rid of all your raggedy t-shirts, all your raggedy
But they're
underwear,
so comfortable.
yeah, Exactly. That, well, listen. I mean, Sheila, I had to start with me because I'm to your point. I'm like, but I like these jeans. But I had to like, no, they're raggedy. I got to get rid of them. Oh my goodness. And
Yeah.
so I just had to I had to start little by little, and I still continue to do that. I catch myself doing things. I'm like, well, Dexter, where did that come from? That's not an abundance mentality. That's a shortage mentality. And so when I find myself in the things in life having a shortage mentality, I have to address it. And then sometimes I have to, God, will you help me with this? Because I'm not thinking about this the right way.
Right. Well, the little story that I want to share before we wrap up is when, every year, when I guess my daughter was in high school, and, the big thing is to go school shopping. I remember
Exactly.
that,
Yeah.
even as a
Yeah.
child, our mother taking us to get our school clothes.
Exactly.
Well, as long as I was spending my money, then, you know, name brands or whatever, that was fine.
Okay.
Cost was not an
Not a
issue,
problem.
not a problem. But Sheila got wise,
Yes, ma'am.
and I gave her money, and I said, here's some money. You go out and,
Figure it out.
get your
Go for it.
clothes.
Right.
And lo and behold, come back. Well, Nikki, where did you get that? Oh, I went to Salvation Army, or I
Uh-huh.
went to Goodwill. It's like, okay.
Uh-huh.
So she found some nice looking clothes,
Exactly.
paid less for it,
Money and
and
kept
got
more.
more for her money.
Exactly.
So, but I just wanted to share that because I said, okay.
Well, but what's funny is when you put the money in her hand, and
Right.
she had
Mm-hmm.
the experience of saying, you know what, I can get this over here for 20 and it looks good. I can get this over here for 5 or 7, and I could keep the difference, or I could get a couple more things, and so that's how we have to begin to train our children
Right. Or
early on.
decide I really don't need it, or I'll wait
Exactly.
until it goes on sale.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that builds
So
in that, like you said, about delayed gratification.
delayed gratification. Exactly.
So,
And those are the things that we teach our kids and grandkids and all those who are connected to us, because that's what financial literacy is about. It's about you gaining specific knowledge, but
mhm.
then learning how to apply that knowledge to your day-to-day finances. That's a literate person, and so that's what we strive to do.
Okay. Right, Pastor Jenkins, I'm telling you, I'm probably gonna have to have you come back. But what I would like you to do is, what is, like, for instance, um, young people starting out in life,
Okay.
what would you recommend? What would be the main thing that you recommend that they start doing as far as their money is concerned
Right.
and their finance, that's really going to give them a good, strong foundation
Gotcha. Okay.
in
I would.
addition to
Right.
Christ?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Okay,
It definitely starts with him.
right.
Uh, but then I would say it's from a foundational thing. I would say you have to educate yourself,
Okay,
meaning I have to take the time to, because our formal education, it wasn't designed to teach us about money. It was designed to get you ready to earn money,
right.
but it wasn't designed to teach you how to save and accumulate and invest money. So what you have to do is you have to take, I always say the best investment, the best investment you can make is in yourself. So you got to take the time to read books, go to webinars and all those type of things now, and build a good base. So obviously I said the Bible is a good book. If you go to my YouTube channel, Miss Sheila,
Mhm.
I have a few recommendations on there. I have a book that I did a teaching on how to avoid the ignorance tax. And I said the ignorance tax is the money that we get paid because we don't know, that we get charged because other
Because
folks
we
don't.
don't know.
We don't know. And so I have a list of books there that I have recommended. But so that would be my first thing. You really got to begin to educate yourself. Then the second thing I'll begin to say is see how fast you can begin to save and build up your cushion fund or your contingency fund, as you call it. Because the things of life happen. And so when the things of life happen, if I can go and pull from that fund as opposed to putting it on my credit card or having to borrow from some other place, I'll be in a much better position.
Okay. Well, I have enjoyed our conversation,
Yes, ma'am.
and thank you for being my guest. And I do plan to have you come back.
Please have me come back because I want to see your growth. So I was your first conversation. I want to see
Right.
it,
And hopefully,
down the line.
I'll have, I will have some more bells and whistles
Yes,
and
that's
so
fine.
forth by then.
No,
But this is fine.
no, no,
I
no, no. This
had
is good.
this and I
Exactly.
used what I already had.
What you had in your hand, right? That God tells us to use what you got in your hand.
Yes,
And you use what you had in your hand, and then now
yes,
he'll
I
begin
did.
to multiply that. As you get more experience and as you get a sense of what your show's going to be about more, you'll begin to have different individuals on. Because I think your format is wide enough that you can touch on a lot of different things.
Oh, yes, yes. And that's one of the things that I'm working on,
Yes, ma'am.
doing that.
Yeah.
Would you, and I do plan to, when I upload this video, I'm going to put down your social media
Please
information.
do.
And I was
Yes.
just wondering if you would just I know you're on Facebook.
Yep.
Would
I'm on
you?
all of them. I'm on. So the first place I want people to go is go to dexterbjenkins.com. And
Okay.
over there, I have a ebook that I call what you talked about, the 3 ships of wealth building: stewardship, ownership, and entrepreneurship. So if they go there, I will give them that book for free. All they got to do is put in their email address so we can stay in contact with them. They'll get that book there. And then they can follow me as Dexter B. Jenkins on all the social media things. So they can follow me as Dexter B. Jenkins on YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter, Instagram. And so they can follow me on those as well. But start out with Dexter B. Jenkins, get that free ebook, and then follow me in all the other areas because I would love to stay in contact with you as well as your tribe that you're building.
Right. Well, thank you. And as I said, it's been enjoyable, and you take care, and God
All right.
bless you. And I'm going to stop using my debit card. Oh, yes.
Yeah, use your credit card. That's just use your credit card, and they just pay it off at the end of the month. You'll be fine.
Okay. Well, you take care.
All right, you as well. We'll be in touch.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.